is a bike that I found on Facebook Marketplace for just £10, and today I'm going to try and flip it for a profit, even seeing if I can turn it into something worthwhile. Now in my last video, I bought a bike that was completely covered in rust, and after fixing it up, it actually turned out way better than I expected. So I wanted to try this again, but this time, things didn't go as smoothly as expected, because finding a good bike this time was a lot harder than I expected. I mean, I spent ages scrolling through listings and nothing really stood out. Some were way too expensive, others looked completely ruined. The few that actually seemed okay, they didn't really go anywhere. At one point, I actually found a bike that I really liked and I actually wanted. So I messaged the seller trying to get the price down just a little bit, but they would not budge. They did not like my offer. So unfortunately, that did not work out. So at this point, I'd spent all my time searching and I still didn't have a bike, which is when I finally came across this one. And straight away, it just felt a little bit off. It only had one photo, and that one photo wasn't even very good. It was low quality and it was really hard to see any details. And so at this point, I had a decision to make, because this bike, it was over an hour away and I still barely knew anything about it. All I had was that one low quality photo, which meant this could either be a really good deal or a complete waste of time. I decided I was going to take the risk, and when I finally saw the bike in person, it just fell off. It didn't look completely broken, but it definitely didn't look as good as what I was hoping for. I mean, it was so dirty, it was rough around the edges, and clearly had not been looked after properly. But before I could really take a good look at it, the seller, they were in a rush. They brought the bike out immediately, barely said anything, and before I even had time to actually check the bike out properly, they were already expecting the money. And at this point, I should have probably taken a step back, actually tested the bike and looked over everything properly. But in the moment, I was just a little bit stressed. I didn't look at all the details properly, so I just paid for it. And just like that, they went straight back inside, and I was kind of just left there in the middle of nowhere with just a bike that I just bought. I hadn't tested it yet, I had not inspected any of the issues, nothing. Now that I had the bike at home, it was time to figure out what I had actually just bought, because at this point I hadn't tested it, I hadn't properly checked it, and honestly this could be way worse than I thought. So I started with the most obvious thing, the tires, and straight away I realized they were completely flat. I mean, fully deflated. They were even making squeaks as you pushed them around. Obviously, that was not a good sign. But the bigger problem was, I didn't know why they were flat. This could be for a few reasons. They could just be low on air, it could be a puncture, or it might even need completely new tires. And there's a big difference between those, because one is a quick fix, while the others start to add cost to the bike. So at that point, I wasn't really sure what I was dealing with. And if it turned out to be something serious, that could kill the profit completely. That's when I started noticing more, because the more I looked at the frame, the worse it got. There were scratches everywhere. I mean, all over the paint. At first I thought it was just a little bit of dirt, but no, as I looked closer, these were actual marks in the frame. As I kept on looking across the entire bike, looking at the chain, looking at the gears, I realized they were just so dirty, completely covered in dirt and grime, and it's just years and years of buildup. As I kept going, I noticed rust all over, not just in one place, but in multiple areas across the bike. The handlebars, the small components in between the wheels. I might just be able to scratch it off and polish it and make it look good, but still, this wasn't ideal. But then I got to the seat, and this is where things got a little bit more annoying, because I tried to adjust it to get it to a more natural height, and it just wouldn't move. So I kept on trying, put a bit more force into it, and eventually it moved. And honestly, at this point, the bike just looked rough. It was covered in dust, dirt, fluff. There was really only one thing I could do, and that's clean it. So I grabbed a jet wash and started cleaning the bike, and almost instantly you could see a huge difference. I mean, just from spraying the first section, layers of dirt just started coming off, and as I kept going, the whole bike just started to change. What looked like an old and neglected bike actually started to look kind of decent. Okay, wait, this actually looks way better. But at the same time, it made me notice something, because as all the dirt came off, it started revealing everything underneath. All of the scratches, all of the worn areas, all of the little imperfections that were hidden before. So even though it looked cleaner, it also looked more worn, which wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. But I kept going. I cleaned the frame, the wheels, the chain cover, just to get everything as clean as possible. And after going over the whole bike, it actually looked almost brand new, which honestly, that kind of surprised me. But of course, it wasn't all smooth, because because whilst I was cleaning it, something went wrong. The bike fell over. Not just once, but twice. And now that I could actually see everything properly, it was time to figure out what still needed fixing, because even though it looked better, there were still things that I wasn't happy with, mainly the paint. It just didn't look good. So I started thinking about ways I might be able to fix it, and that's when I had the idea. Instead of repainting the whole bike, what if I just touched it up? Something simple, like nail polish. So I went online and I started looking for one, and I was so surprised because I thought nail polish was cheap. It turns out most of them were actually kind of expensive, which didn't really make much sense for me for what I was trying to do. But eventually I found one for about £3, which was good enough. So I ordered it and planned to use that to fix the paint. The problem was it wasn't going to arrive for a few days, which meant I couldn't really move forward with that part yet. So while I was waiting for the nail polish to arrive, I decided to get everything else ready. If I was going to do this properly, the prep actually mattered. So I started taping the bike, covering the areas I didn't want to touch, just trying to keep everything as clean as possible. Honestly, this part took longer than expected, and once everything was taped off, it was time for the very next step. I wasn't completely sure how this was going to turn out, because this could either make the bike look way better, or it could completely ruin it. And this is where things slowed down a little bit, because once it's on, there's not really much you can do, except for wait. I came back later, and I moved on to the next step, actually painting it. Now, I didn't go over the whole bike, I just went over the areas where it actually needed, trying to cover up all of the scratches. And once I was done, I left it overnight, because at this point, there wasn't really much else I could do. So the next day I came back, I peeled off all the tape, and I cleaned up any of the spills that I'd made. And straight away, it actually looked so much better than I expected. It wasn't perfect, but then there was still one more problem. The nail polish I ordered, it still hadn't arrived. In fact, it got delayed by another 2 days, which meant what was supposed to be a quick fix turned out to be a 5-day wait. After a few days, it finally showed up, and now this was the part I'd been waiting for, because this was going to decide whether the whole idea actually worked. So I started applying it, just on the small scratches and the worn areas, trying to blend everything in, and almost instantly, it actually worked. It didn't just cover up the scratches, it blended in surprisingly well. Okay, wait, this actually looks pretty good. Now that the bag was finally done, it was time for the part that actually matters, trying to sell it. Because up until now, I've cleaned it, I've fixed it, and I've improved how it looks. But none of that really means anything if nobody wants to buy it. So before listing it, I wanted to make it look as good as possible, because how it looks in photos can completely change how much someone's willing to pay. So I gave it one final clean. I wiped everything down, went all over the details, pumped up the tires. Thankfully, there was no puncture in the tires, and I was just trying to get the bike to look as perfect as I could. And honestly, it made a huge difference. The frame looked cleaner, small details stood out more, and overall, it just looked like a more presentable bike. So now it was time to take the photos. I took it outside, I found a pretty decent spot, took a bunch of photos, different angles, just trying to get the best possible shots. And then I went back, I edited them slightly in Photoshop. Nothing crazy. Once that was done, it was time to list them. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because pricing it right, probably the most important part. If I set it too high, nobody's going to buy it. But if I set it too low, I'm just losing money. So I had to find a balance. And after thinking about it for a little bit, I listed it for £70. I wasn't expecting to get that. I was pretty sure most people were going to offer less. That was kind of the plan. List it for higher and see what offers come in. So I posted the listing, and now there's nothing left to do except for wait. At first, nothing actually happened. No messages, no offers, nothing. Which it started to make me question things, because maybe I'd priced it too high, or maybe it just didn't look as good as I thought it did. Maybe the photos were too bad. So for the first few days, I just kind of waited. I checked the listing, refreshing it multiple times, adjusting the photos, but still nothing. But then after about a week, I actually got a message, and right away, it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. They offered me £50, which was lower than I was expecting. But at the same time, it was the first real offer I'd actually had. So now I had a decision to make. I could either hold out and hope for something better, or I could take the offer and guarantee the sale. And honestly, after waiting that long, I didn't really want to risk it. So I just accepted it, and just like that, the bike was sold. So I bought this bike for £10. I did some basic work on it, and I ended up selling it for £50, which means I made a profit of £40.